What if the secret to success isn't what you do, or even how you do it, but why you do it? Most people think winning in business or in life is about having the best product, the smartest strategy, or the flashiest marketing. So we spend years perfecting our skills, crafting our resumes, upgrading our tools, chasing the next hack or trend. But here's the kicker. Even with all that, most people still feel stuck, uninspired, or like something's just off. Here's the truth. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. That's the radical insight at the heart of Start With Why by Simon Sinek. This isn't just another motivational mantra, it's a biological, psychological, and deeply human principle that drives lasting influence, loyalty, and success. Whether you're selling a product, leading a team, building a brand, or just trying to figure out your next move in life, your why is the engine that pulls everything forward. This book is a game changer for anyone who's tired of blending in, chasing competitors, or wondering why their efforts aren't landing the way they should. If you're an entrepreneur, a brand builder, a manager, a marketer, or even a creative wondering how to make your work matter, this one's for you. You'll discover the power of the Golden Circle, a simple but profound framework that flips everything you thought you knew about leadership and communication. You'll see why some companies inspire generations while others fade fast, why some leaders earn blind loyalty while others fight for attention, and most importantly, how you can uncover your own why and build a life and business around it. Because once you find your why, everything else starts to make sense. So if you've been searching for clarity, purpose, and a way to stand out in a crowded world, if you're ready to lead with meaning instead of just metrics, then it's time to rethink everything you thought you knew. Let's get started. Chapter 1. Assume you know. Imagine walking into a meeting where everyone's nodding in agreement, convinced they're making the right decision. There's confidence in the room. Charts have been studied, spreadsheets double-checked. The logic seems flawless, but something feels off. You don't know why, but your gut says this plan isn't it. You say nothing. Later, the plan fails. Why? Because everyone assumed they knew. This chapter opens with a bold warning. Assumptions can be dangerous. Simon Sinek shines a light on a universal mistake that leaders, companies, and individuals make every day. They assume they know what motivates people, what customers want, and what success looks like. But most of the time, they're guessing, and they don't even realize it. Think about it. Businesses often rely on superficial metrics, sales numbers, customer surveys, marketing trends to guide decisions. And while those data points feel objective, they often miss the deeper human truth. Sinek reminds us that humans are emotional creatures and emotion, not logic, is what drives behavior. When companies make decisions based solely on what appears to work without understanding why it works, they set themselves up for failure. Take the example of TiVo. When it launched, TiVo was revolutionary. Pause live TV, skip commercials, record shows automatically. It solved a real problem and offered cutting-edge features, but despite glowing reviews and loyal fans, TiVo flopped in the mass market. Why? Because the company marketed what their product did, not why it mattered. They assumed consumers cared about features, but what people really wanted was freedom. Freedom from commercials, freedom to watch on their schedule, freedom to control their time. Had TiVo communicated that deeper purpose, things might have gone differently. Sinek isn't anti-data. In fact, he respects logic and research, but he challenges the idea that numbers alone are enough. He says most of us are playing a guessing game, pretending we know things we don't, simply because we have data. But data without purpose is just noise. What's missing is context, why we do what we do. The chapter also dives into the difference between manipulation and inspiration. Many companies use manipulation to drive short-term success. Discounts, limited time offers, fear tactics, peer pressure, or promising status. You've seen it. Only 3 seats left, or buy now and save $50. These methods work, but only temporarily. They don't build loyalty, they don't build trust. They're transactional. Once the offer ends, so does the relationship. But inspiration, that's where the magic happens. When people believe in your mission, when they feel connected to your purpose, they stick around. They become loyal customers, passionate employees, and even brand evangelists. Inspiration creates movements. Manipulation creates transactions. Sinek uses Apple as a prime example. Apple doesn't sell features, they sell beliefs. Their message isn't, "We make great computers." It's, "We believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently." That's their why. And because of that, people don't just buy Apple products, they identify with them. They line up for hours, pay premium prices, and proudly display that glowing logo like it means something, because to them, it does. So why do most companies ignore this approach? Because it's harder, it takes longer, and it requires a level of clarity and self-awareness that most leaders don't have. It's much easier to chase quarterly results or copy what the competition is doing. But that's not how great leaders operate. Great leaders assume they don't know. They question everything. They stay curious. They dig deeper. They don't settle for surface-level answers. They want to understand why things work, not just what works. This mindset shift from assuming you know to seeking clarity is the foundation of everything else in the book. Without it, you can't uncover your true purpose, you can't build a loyal following, and you can't lead with impact. It's not about having all the answers, it's about asking better questions. There's also a personal takeaway here. This isn't just for CEOs and marketers. It applies to anyone trying to live a meaningful life. How many of us go through the motions every day, choosing careers, chasing goals, making big decisions, without really understanding why we're doing it? We assume we know what will make us happy: a promotion, a bigger paycheck, a new house. But once we get those things, we often feel empty, restless, or stuck. Why? Because we never asked the deeper question, what really drives me? Sinek challenges each of us to pause and reflect. Don't assume, ask, dig, discover. Because the real answers, the ones that lead to fulfillment, loyalty, impact, and success, start with why. To wrap it up, this chapter sets the tone for everything that follows. It exposes the blind spots that trip up even the smartest leaders. It reveals the flaws in our thinking. And it invites us to step back from the noise of daily decisions and reconnect with the deeper reason behind our actions. It's about replacing the illusion of certainty with the power of purpose. So whether you're building a business, leading a team, or just trying to live with more intention, start by ditching the assumptions. Get curious, start asking why. Because once you stop assuming, you can start inspiring, and that's where real leadership begins. Chapter 2: Carrots and Sticks. Ever wonder why some companies seem to thrive effortlessly, while others constantly fight for every sale, every employee, every bit of attention? They all work hard. They all have budgets, teams, strategies. So what separates the ones that create loyal customers and inspired employees from the ones that rely on constant promotions, price drops, and gimmicks just to stay afloat? In this chapter, Simon Sinek dives deep into the methods organizations use to influence behavior, both externally with customers and internally with employees. And it all boils down to 2 tools: manipulation and inspiration, or in simpler terms, carrots and sticks. Manipulation is everywhere in the business world: flash sales, limited time offers, fear-based marketing, rebates, peer pressure, all designed to push people into action. And the truth is, it works, at least in the short term. You lower the price, you get more sales, you create urgency, people respond. But here's the catch, it doesn't last. Customers attracted by price will leave for a better price. Employees motivated by bonuses may jump ship for a higher paycheck. Loyalty built on manipulation isn't loyalty at all, it's dependency. Sinek breaks down why this is such a dangerous cycle. Companies that rely too heavily on manipulations start to lose their sense of direction. Instead of building a brand or a mission, they build a machine that constantly needs fuel. More discounts, more tricks, more noise, and eventually they burn out. Worse, they condition their customers to expect the deal, the incentive, the catch. Without it, people stop caring. Think about a furniture store that runs a going out of business sale every weekend. At first, it grabs attention. Over time, it becomes a joke. People stop trusting the brand. That's what happens when manipulation becomes your default setting. It erodes trust. Then there's the stick side of the equation. The pressure, fear of missing out, fear of loss, fear of judgment. Buy this or fall behind. Use this product or be left out. Take this offer or regret it forever. Again, these strategies create urgency. But fear-driven behavior rarely builds long-term relationships. It creates stress, not loyalty. On the flip side, Sinek introduces a better way, inspiration. It's not flashy, it doesn't offer instant gratification, but it's powerful and it's sustainable. When people are inspired, they act because they want to, not because they have to. They feel connected to something bigger. They believe. And belief is far more powerful than bribery. Take Southwest Airlines, for example. While other airlines focused on cutting costs, adding fees, and squeezing more seats onto planes, Southwest focused on their why, making air travel accessible and enjoyable for everyone. Their employees believed in the mission, their customers trusted them. They didn't need to run endless discounts to stay in business. They had something better, loyalty. Sinek explains that manipulation can drive a transaction, but inspiration drives commitment. And that's the secret behind great leadership. It's not about getting someone to buy something. It's about getting them to believe in something. This applies inside organizations too. Many companies use carrots and sticks to manage employees. Bonuses for top performers, warnings or demotions for poor ones. It sounds logical, right? Reward the good, punish the bad. But the problem is, it reduces people to machines. Performance goes up when there's a bonus, then drops once the bonus is gone. Motivation becomes external, not internal, and people stop caring about the mission. But when you lead with why, when people understand the purpose behind their work, they don't just show up for a paycheck. They show up because it matters. They bring creativity, energy, and heart. Not because they're told to, but because they want to. Sinek gives an example from the Marine Corps. In the military, there are no million-dollar bonuses, no flashy perks. Yet soldiers show up with courage and commitment. Most of us can't even imagine. Why? Because they believe in the cause. They believe in each other. They are inspired, not manipulated. So what's the big takeaway from this chapter? If your strategy relies on carrots and sticks, on constant promotions, fear tactics, or external pressure, you may win a few battles, but you'll lose the war, because manipulation builds transactions, inspiration builds movements. This doesn't mean incentives are bad. Discounts can help, rewards can motivate, but they can't be your foundation. They're tools, not a mission. If you don't have a clear why behind your actions, all the carrots and sticks in the world won't save you. Sinek also makes a crucial point about trust. Manipulation may get people to act, but only inspiration earns trust. And in today's world, where consumers have endless choices and employees have more freedom than ever. Trust is everything. If people don't trust your brand, they'll move on. If they don't trust your leadership, they'll disengage. To wrap it all together, this chapter is a wake-up call. It challenges businesses, leaders, and even individuals to step back and ask, am I relying on manipulation or am I leading with inspiration? Are people following me because they have to, or because they believe in what I stand for? Because in the end, carrots and sticks might move people, but only why can move them to stay. Chapter 3. The Golden Circle. Picture a target with 3 concentric circles. The outermost ring is what, the middle ring is how, and right in the center, the bullseye, is why. This, Simon Sinek explains, is the golden circle, the foundation of everything, and start with why. It's not just a clever model, it's a complete reframe of how successful people and organizations communicate, make decisions, and inspire action. Let's start with the outermost ring, what? Every person and every company on the planet knows what they do. That's the easy part. It's the products they sell, the services they offer, the job title they hold. We make smartphones. I'm a financial advisor. We build electric cars. That's the what. Now go one layer deeper, how. Some people and companies know how they do it. These are the things that set them apart. Their values, proprietary methods, or unique selling points. Maybe it's their customer service, their eco-friendly materials, or their sleek design. It's the differentiator, the secret sauce. But at the core, where the magic happens, is the why. Very few people or companies can clearly articulate why they do what they do. And no, to make a profit isn't the answer. Profit is a result. The why is the purpose, the cause, the belief. It's the reason the business exists in the first place. It's why you get out of bed in the morning. It's the deeper mission that fuels everything. Sinek argues that most companies communicate from the outside in. They start with what, maybe talk about how, and never get to why. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, user-friendly, and easy to use. Want to buy one? That's logical, straightforward, and forgettable. But great leaders, the ones who inspire, flip the script. They communicate from the inside out. They start with why. We believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Recognize it. That's Apple. Apple doesn't just sell gadgets. They sell a belief, a worldview. And people don't just buy their products, they buy into their why. That's the difference between loyalty and convenience, between raving fans and occasional buyers. Sinek makes the case that starting with why taps into the biology of decision-making. The neocortex, the part of our brain responsible for rational, analytical thought, processes what? But the limbic brain, the part responsible for feelings, loyalty, and behavior, processes why. So when leaders start with why, they're not just appealing to logic. They're speaking directly to the emotional brain, the part that actually drives action. Think about it like this. Have you ever made a big decision, choosing a college, a job, even a relationship, where everything looked good on paper, but it just didn't feel right? Or maybe something didn't make complete sense, but you went with it anyway because it just felt right. That's your limbic brain at work. It doesn't have language, but it has clarity. And that's why matters so much. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. If your message only appeals to logic, you'll constantly be battling for attention. But if it speaks to belief, to emotion, to identity, you will connect on a much deeper level. That's how movements are built. Take Martin Luther King Jr. He didn't get up in front of thousands and say, I have a plan. He said, I have a dream. He didn't start with how, he started with why. And because of that, people followed him. Not because they had to, but because they believed in what he believed. Or look at the Wright Brothers. They didn't have funding, degrees, or support, but they had a clear why. They believed that flight would change the world. Meanwhile, Samuel Langley, who had all the resources, failed. Why? Because he was chasing fame and fortune, what and how, but had no why. This chapter isn't just about companies or historical figures. It's about you. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a leader, a teacher, or someone trying to figure out your next step, the golden circle applies. If you're clear about your why, you'll attract people who believe what you believe. You'll build trust. You'll create something meaningful. Sinek also offers a warning. Clarity of why is not enough. You need discipline of how and consistency of what. It's not about slogans or branding, it's about alignment. When your actions reflect your beliefs, people sense the authenticity. But when your why says one thing and your behavior says another, the disconnect is obvious, and it erodes trust. So how do you start with why? It takes reflection, digging deep, asking uncomfortable questions. What drives you beyond money or success? What injustice do you want to fix? What lights you up when no one's watching? Your why is personal, it's emotional, and once you find it, everything changes. Because people aren't just looking for products, they're looking for meaning, they're looking for connection. They're looking for someone who believes what they believe. That's the heart of the golden circle. Start with why and let it ripple outward into how and what. Because when you lead from the inside out, you don't just sell, you inspire. And in a noisy world, inspiration is the most valuable currency there is. Chapter 4, this is not opinion, this is biology. Why do we say things like, it just felt right, or I can't explain it, but I trust them? Simon Sinek answers that question not with theories or opinions, but with biology. In this chapter, he shows that starting with why isn't just a nice idea or good branding, it's hardwired into the human brain. Let's go back to the golden circle. Why, how, what? Now imagine that mapped directly onto the structure of your brain. The outer ring, what, corresponds to the neocortex, the rational analytical part that handles facts, language, and logic. This is where we process features, benefits, and pricing. The inner two rings, why and how, align with the limbic brain, responsible for feelings, behavior, trust, loyalty, and decision-making. The limbic brain has no capacity for language, but it controls emotions and instincts. That's why people often struggle to explain why they feel a certain way, or why they trust someone. They literally can't articulate it. Their limbic brain knows, but their neocortex can't find the words. This is huge. It means people make decisions emotionally and justify them rationally. They'll say, I like this car because it has great mileage. But the real reason might be that the brand feels safe or exciting or prestigious. We buy based on why, then use what to make it sound smart. Sinek emphasizes this is biology, not psychology. You can't talk people into belief with only facts. You have to reach their emotional core first. That's why great leaders and great brands speak to the why, because they're speaking directly to the part of the brain that drives action. Let's put this into real-world context. Think about Harley-Davidson. It's not just a motorcycle brand. It's freedom, rebellion, identity. People tattoo the logo on their skin. That's not rational, that's tribal, that's emotional, that's limbic brain engagement. Same goes for Apple. You don't hear Apple say, we have 16 gigabytes of RAM and a 2.8 gigahertz processor. They say, we think differently. And that taps into the part of the brain that feels aligned, connected, inspired. As a result, customers don't just buy the product, they buy into the purpose. This biological approach also explains the difficulty of changing people's minds with logic alone. Ever tried to argue someone out of a deeply held belief using facts? It rarely works. That's because belief lives in the limbic brain. It's emotional, not rational. You can only reach it through story, purpose, and shared values. That's what why does. Let's go deeper. In the limbic brain, the part responsible for decision-making is called the amygdala. It's the emotional processor that guides choices like who to trust, what to buy, and whether to follow someone. When companies or leaders communicate only the what, the specs, the prices, the deals, they bypass the amygdala. But when they start with why, they light it up. And once that emotional trust is built, decisions become easier. That's why we stick with certain brands or leaders, even when alternatives seem better on paper. It's not about logic, it's about feeling safe, understood, and connected. When a leader or brand speaks our language, not just with words, but with intention, we lean in. Sinek makes the case that great leaders don't just have charisma, they have clarity. Clarity of why. That clarity speaks directly to our biology and builds trust, faster than any advertisement or spreadsheet ever could. He also warns about inconsistency. When a company says one thing but does another, it triggers distrust, not in the logical brain but in the emotional brain. And once trust is broken, it's hard to rebuild. We might not even know why we stopped buying from them or following them. We just feel something's off. That's the limbic system saying, nope, not safe. So, how can you apply this? If you're a leader, stop obsessing over features and benefits. Start talking about purpose. What do you believe? Why does your company exist beyond making money? That's what people will connect with. If you're building a personal brand, get clear on your values. Speak from them. Make sure your actions align with your beliefs. People will trust you not because of your resume, but because of your why. If you're marketing a product, lead with the mission, not the specs. Instead of saying, this running shoe has triple-layer cushioning, say, we believe every step should feel like freedom. Then back it up with the details. This is also a wake-up call for anyone who's felt frustrated trying to explain something they deeply believe in but can't quite put into words. It's not a weakness, it's biology. The most powerful beliefs live in a part of your brain that doesn't speak English, but it does drive behavior. Your job is to build the bridge from belief to expression. That's why stories matter. Stories are how we transfer emotion, how we tap into the limbic brain of others. That's why Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech moved people. It wasn't data, it was vision. That's why JFK's moonshot speech inspired a nation. It wasn't a technical plan, it was a belief in progress and human achievement. In the end, this chapter is a blueprint for how real influence works, not through manipulation, not through charts, but through clarity, consistency, and biology. Start with why, because the brain is wired to respond to it. Speak to the part of people that feels, that believes, that trusts, because if you can win the heart, the mind will follow. Chapter 5. Clarity, Discipline, and Consistency. Let's say you found your why, your purpose, your cause, the belief that fuels everything you do. That's a powerful first step. But here's where most people and companies slip. They can't keep it clear. They don't have the discipline to stay true to it, and they struggle to express it consistently. Simon Sinek argues in this chapter that knowing your why is only the beginning. The real challenge is living it, day in, day out, with unwavering clarity, discipline, and consistency. Because without those three pillars, your why is just a nice idea. Let's break it down. First up, clarity of why. You can't inspire people if you're not sure what you stand for. You might have a vague idea of your purpose, something about helping others or being innovative, but that's not enough. You need laser-sharp clarity. Your why should be simple, actionable, and emotionally resonant. It has to be something you believe in so strongly that it drives every decision, every strategy, every conversation. Great leaders and great companies have this kind of clarity. Think of Patagonia. Their why isn't just selling outdoor gear, It's protecting the environment. Everything they do points back to that, from the materials they use to their marketing to their decision to discourage overconsumption by telling people not to buy what they don't need. But clarity alone won't cut it. You also need the discipline of how. That's the second circle in the golden circle model. If why is your belief, how is the set of values, principles, or actions that bring it to life? It's how you stay true to your purpose, especially when it's hard. This is where most organizations wobble. They get pulled by trends, distracted by competitors, or tempted by quick wins. Discipline means saying no to shortcuts. It means hiring the right people, making tough calls, and building systems that support your why even when no one's watching. Take Starbucks. Howard Schultz didn't just want to sell coffee, he wanted to create a third place, a comforting space between home and work. That vision guided how they designed their stores, how they trained baristas, and even how they named drinks. When Schultz stepped away from the company, Starbucks started chasing efficiency over experience, cutting corners, automating more processes. Profit went up briefly, but the soul of the brand started to fade. Eventually, Schultz returned, not just to fix the numbers, but to restore the why. That's discipline. Now for the third piece, consistency of what. The outer ring of the golden circle is what, the tangible products or services a company delivers. If the what doesn't align with the why and how, people sense the disconnect. And in a world where consumers are more informed and skeptical than ever, inconsistency is a trust killer. This applies not only to what you say, but to everything you do. The way you treat customers, the experience your employees have, the tone of your social media posts. The details matter. Take a brand like Disney. Their why is to create happiness through magical experiences, and that shows up in everything, from the cleanliness of their parks, to the training of cast members, to the fact that they call employees cast members in the first place. Everything aligns. That consistency reinforces the belief. It makes it easier for customers to trust, to connect, and to come back. Sinek makes a crucial point here. We don't trust companies or people because they're perfect. We trust them because they're consistent. It's that feeling of knowing what to expect. And consistency builds familiarity, which builds trust, which builds loyalty. This also matters on a personal level. Think of someone in your life you trust deeply. Chances are they don't always agree with you. They're not always cheerful, but they're consistent. You know what they stand for. You know how they'll respond. That's what earns your trust. Now, let's flip it. Ever met someone who says all the right things, but something feels off? Their words say one thing, but their actions say another. That's a lack of alignment between why, how, and what. And your gut picks up on it instantly. That's why companies who try to pivot too fast often lose their core audience. If Nike suddenly started making luxury watches and stopped focusing on sports, we'd all be confused. Not because the watches are bad, but because they don't feel like Nike. There's a break in consistency, and that breaks trust. Another key insight: consistency doesn't mean being repetitive. It means being authentic. You don't have to say your why in every sentence. You have to live it in every decision. And here's the tricky part. The bigger you get, the harder this becomes. More people, more products, more markets. It's easier to lose focus. That's why scaling with purpose requires even more discipline. You need systems to ensure everyone inside your organization knows the why, believes in the why, and understands how to bring it to life. Sinek points out that the companies and leaders who last, who truly inspire, aren't the ones chasing every opportunity. They're the ones doubling down on who they are. They know their why, and they protect it like treasure. So what can you do with this? If you're running a business, write down your why, your how, and your what. See if they align. If your marketing says one thing but your customer experience says another, fix it. If your values are clear but your hiring process doesn't reflect them, fix that too. If you're leading a team, make sure your people understand the mission, not just the numbers. Connect their daily work to the bigger purpose. That creates engagement, not just compliance. If you're building a personal brand or career, get clear on your values. Be disciplined about how you show up. And make sure your actions, words, and choices reflect what you believe. Because at the end of the day, clarity, discipline, and consistency are what transform why from a slogan into a way of life. They're what turn customers into believers, employees into advocates, and companies into movements. So yes, finding your why is essential, but living it, that's where the real work begins. And when you do it right, you won't just stand out in the market. You'll stand for something. Chapter 6. The Emergence of Trust. Imagine two companies offering the same product at the same price with similar quality. One you've never heard of, the other, you'd recommend it to a friend without a second thought. Why? What's the invisible thread that connects us to some businesses, leaders, or co-workers, but not to others? The answer is trust. In this chapter, Simon Sinek explores how trust emerges, not through policies, contracts, or marketing, but through consistency, belief, and a shared sense of purpose. It's not something you can demand. It's something you earn over time by showing up authentically and reliably. Sinek makes it clear that trust isn't built when everything is going great. It's built when things go wrong, when a product fails, a mistake happens, or the unexpected hits. That's when people decide, do I believe in this person? Do I believe in this company? Do I feel safe staying loyal here? Think about your own life. Who do you trust most? Probably not the person who's perfect. You trust the person who shows up, who's honest even when it's uncomfortable, who acts in line with what they say. That's the foundation of trust. Consistency of behavior aligned with belief. In organizations, trust isn't created by mission statements or HR slogans. It's created when leaders communicate why they do what they do, and then prove it every day. When employees feel their leaders believe what they believe, they're more likely to go the extra mile, take risks, and speak up. They feel safe, and when people feel safe, they contribute more meaningfully. Sinek tells the story of Continental Airlines in the 1990s. The company was struggling. Low morale, plummeting customer satisfaction, financial disaster. Then Gordon Bethune took over as CEO. His first move, give every employee a leather jacket, not a raise, not a policy, a gift. Why? Because it was a gesture, one that said, I see you, I value you. And that was just the start. Bethune made it clear that the employees weren't the problem. They were the solution. He shared his why to rebuild an airline that people were proud to work for. He eliminated unnecessary rules. He empowered teams, and he created transparency. The result, trust began to grow. Within years, Continental became one of the top-rated airlines in the U.S. This story reveals a key truth. Trust emerges when people feel they're part of something meaningful, when their leaders show vulnerability, humility, and clarity, when decisions align with values, not just with profits. Sinek dives into the importance of what he calls shared beliefs. You don't have to convince everyone to trust you. You just need to connect with the people who believe what you believe. That shared why creates an immediate bond. It's how great teams form, how loyal customers are built, and how cultures are created. He also makes an important distinction. Trust is not about being liked. It's about being reliable. You can disagree with someone's choices and still trust them if you know they're acting from their principles. But if someone constantly shifts direction, says one thing and does another, or hides behind policies, trust erodes fast. Sinek compares this to the feeling of being in a great relationship or friendship. You don't question motives, you don't second guess. Even if you disagree, you know where the other person stands. That's what strong leaders offer: emotional clarity and belief-based consistency. And here's where it gets especially interesting. Trust inside an organization always mirrors the clarity of its why. If the leadership is vague about their mission, employees don't feel anchored. If the leadership flips its strategy every quarter chasing profits, employees feel used. But if the leadership stands firm in its beliefs, even through failure, the team becomes loyal, even fierce. Sinek uses Apple again as a model. People trust Apple not just because of product design or innovation, but because of emotional consistency. Every device, ad, store, and decision points back to the belief in challenging the status quo and empowering creativity. It's not about the features, it's about the why. And that trust means customers will stick around. They'll try new products, forgive missteps, even advocate on Apple's behalf. That's not brand loyalty, it's belief loyalty, and it's incredibly hard to break once it's built. On the flip side, Sinek talks about when companies lose trust. It usually starts subtly, cutting corners, breaking promises, chasing quarterly results over long-term purpose. At first, customers or employees may not notice, but the limbic brain, the part responsible for trust, senses the shift. And once people feel betrayed, no amount of clever marketing can fix it. He also discusses how toxic cultures form when trust is absent. In low-trust environments, people withhold ideas. They cover their backs. They focus on surviving, not thriving. Innovation stalls, morale tanks, and the organization slowly implodes from within. But in high-trust cultures, people collaborate freely. They take risks. They speak up. They care. Not because they're being paid more, but because they believe in the mission. That's the difference between managing people and leading them. So how do you build this kind of trust? It starts with clarity of why. Your team must understand and believe in your purpose. Then you need the discipline to act in alignment with that purpose. Consistently, it means making values-based decisions, even when it's hard. It means rewarding behavior that supports the mission, not just results. And it means listening, really listening to your people. When you do that, trust emerges slowly, quietly, and powerfully. To wrap it up, this chapter reminds us that trust is the currency of leadership. It's not given, it's earned. And it's earned not through perfection or performance, but through purpose. In a noisy, skeptical world, people don't just want products, they want belief. They want to feel safe. They want to trust. And trust starts not with what you do, but with why you do it. Chapter 7. How a tipping point tips. Have you ever wondered how some ideas explode while others quietly disappear? Why certain products, movements, or leaders suddenly gain traction, seemingly overnight, while others, even if just as good, never catch on? In this chapter, Simon Sinek breaks it down through the lens of the law of diffusion of innovation, showing how ideas spread, why belief is the real catalyst, and how a clear why ignites the tipping point. Let's start with the basics. The law of diffusion of innovation, originally developed by Everett Rogers, says that people adopt new ideas or technologies in a predictable pattern. First come the innovators, about 2.5% of the population. They're the curious risk-takers, the early adopters of bleeding-edge tech, the ones camping out overnight for the latest iPhone. Next come the early adopters, 13.5%. These are opinion leaders and influencers, not just on social media, but in communities, workplaces, and industries. They're quick to jump on new ideas, but only if they feel emotionally aligned. Then comes the early majority, 34%. They're more cautious, they won't be first, but once something proves useful or trustworthy, they'll follow. After that, you've got the late majority, 34%. skeptics who only adopt when most others have, and the laggards, 16%, who are the last to embrace change, if ever. Here's the kicker: the tipping point, the moment an idea breaks into the mainstream, happens when you move from the early adopters to the early majority. That's around 15 to 18% of market adoption. Cross that and momentum snowballs. But getting from early adopters to the early majority, that's the hardest jump. Sinek calls this the chasm, and crossing it doesn't happen through marketing tricks, discounts, or flashy features. It happens through belief. Early adopters buy why you do something. They connect with purpose, not product. They want to be part of a movement, not just consumers of a commodity. So if your message isn't grounded in a clear, authentic why, they won't rally behind you. And if you can't win over the early adopters, you'll never reach the tipping point. Take Apple, again, a recurring star in this book for good reason. Apple's early adopters weren't buying computers, they were buying into a vision to challenge the status quo and empower individuals. That emotional connection helped Apple build an army of loyal believers who became evangelists. They didn't just use the product, they shared it, promoted it, and persuaded others to join the cause. That's how Apple leaped across the chasm. Contrast that with TiVo. As we saw in earlier chapters, TiVo had groundbreaking technology, but they never clearly articulated why it mattered. Their message was all about what the product did: pause live TV, record shows, skip commercials, but it didn't speak to belief. So even though the innovators were excited, the early adopters didn't rally. No belief, no buzz. TiVo fell short of the tipping point. Sinek emphasizes, if you want to reach mass adoption, you must first win over those who are driven by purpose, not practicality. They'll take the leap with you before it's popular, and they'll bring others with them. Now here's where things get personal. This isn't just about business or marketing, it's about leadership. Great leaders inspire the innovators and early adopters by communicating a clear why. They don't have to be loud, they just have to be authentic. Think of Martin Luther King Jr. again. He didn't rally millions by laying out a step-by-step policy plan. He shared a dream, a why that connected emotionally and spiritually with early adopters of civil rights. They believed in what he believed, and they spread the word. That's how a movement tips. Or consider the Wright Brothers. They didn't have funding or government support, but they had belief, a deep, burning purpose to fly and change the world. Their early adopters were friends and community members who believed in their mission. Contrast that with Samuel Langley, who had money, power, and press, but no clear why. When his plane failed, he gave up. When the Wright brothers failed, they tried again. That's belief in action. Sinek makes it clear, if you're a leader, your job isn't to push your idea onto the masses. Your job is to attract those who believe what you believe and let them spread it. Because people don't just want to buy a product or follow a brand. They want to belong. They want to be part of something that feels right, that aligns with their values. So what does this mean in practical terms? If you're launching a new product or company, don't focus first on the mass market. Speak to the believers. Find your tribe. Your early adopters are out there, people who care more about why than what, and they'll be the ones who bring others on board. If you're leading a team, share your vision, not just your goals. Goals are outcomes. Vision is purpose. Purpose fuels belief, and belief is what inspires others to take ownership. If you're trying to create change in your community, your organization, even in yourself, start by asking, why does this matter to me? Get clear, then communicate it, not to everyone, but to the right ones, the ones who feel it too. Remember, the tipping point doesn't come from shouting louder. It comes from resonating deeper, and that resonance begins with why. To wrap it up, this chapter is a masterclass in how ideas spread not through force but through faith, not through manipulation but through meaning. The difference between a product and a movement, between a manager and a leader, between noise and momentum, is why. Chapter 8. Start with why, but know how. You found your why, that driving purpose, the belief that fuels your mission. But what comes next? How do you actually bring that purpose to life in a real, operational, scalable way? That's what this chapter is all about. Simon Sinek opens with a critical reminder: while why is the spark that ignites inspiration, it's the how that fans the flame and keeps it burning. Inspiration without execution is just a dream. If why is your belief, then how is the process, your values, your guiding principles, your methods? It's how your why turns into something people can see, touch, experience, and trust. Take Southwest Airlines. Their why: to make flying accessible and friendly. But how did they do that? By building a business model focused on low costs, quick turnarounds, and strong employee culture. They didn't just believe in democratizing flight. They engineered a system that delivered that belief every day. Sinek calls the people who hold and express the how types. These are the implementers, the builders, the system creators. They turn passion into practice. They're often not the visionaries themselves, but they're the reason a vision can survive, scale, and serve. Every great why-driven leader needs strong how people around them. Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream, but it was others who helped organize buses, secure permits, create logistics. Steve Jobs had the vision, but Steve Wozniak made the first Apple computers a reality. Jobs dreamed it. Woz built it. Without how, why goes nowhere. This is especially true in companies. A founder may be full of passion and purpose, but if that company lacks the processes to hire the right people, design the right products, or serve customers consistently, the mission falls apart. It becomes inconsistent, chaotic, even disillusioning for employees and customers alike. That's why how matters. Sinek emphasizes that how types often live in the background, but their contribution is vital. They take the values of the organization and build systems, behaviors, and culture around them. They ensure the company acts according to its beliefs. Think of a restaurant that claims it's all about community. That's their why. But if the food is always late, the staff is unfriendly, or the service inconsistent, the experience falls flat. The belief isn't enough. It has to be backed up by behavior. That's the role of how. Sinek also explains that organizations must clearly articulate their how values. These are the principles that guide behavior, not just slogans on the wall, but deeply embedded practices. At Apple, for example, simplicity isn't just a design choice. It's a value. It drives how they create user interfaces, packaging, product lines, and even store layouts. Without these how values, companies become scattered. They may have a powerful mission statement, but every team interprets it differently. The result? A brand that feels inconsistent, a culture that lacks cohesion, and leadership that can't scale. So how do you find your how? Sinek suggests looking at the behaviors that reflect your why. What are the core principles you refuse to compromise on, even when it's hard? What values guide your decisions when no one's watching? Those are your how values. They're not buzzwords like integrity or innovation. Unless those things actually show up in your decisions and actions, your how must be lived, not laminated. Once you've defined your how, you need to integrate it into hiring, onboarding, training, performance reviews, decision-making. That way, your company doesn't just say it believes in something, it proves it. Sinek gives an example of Barry Wemler, a manufacturing company with a deeply people-centric why, to build great people who do extraordinary things. But CEO Bob Chapman didn't stop there. He built how into every layer of the company: training programs, leadership development, internal communication. all designed to treat employees with dignity and trust. That's why their turnover is low, engagement is high, and loyalty is off the charts. Their belief system isn't just a plaque on the wall, it's baked into every interaction. Sinek then explores how this principle works in leadership. Great leaders don't just inspire with their vision, they attract the right how types to help them carry it forward, and they trust them, they need them, because visionaries often aren't great at execution. And that's okay if they know how to surround themselves with people who complement them. It's a symbiotic relationship. The why type brings belief and inspiration. The how type brings structure and process. Without each other, they both fail, but together they become unstoppable. Sinek also warns of a common trap. When organizations forget their why and start over-relying on how, they become obsessed with process, efficiency, scaling, and growth, and lose their soul. The company becomes rigid, transactional, and uninspiring. Employees disengage. Customers drift. Eventually, they lose relevance. That's why the balance is key. Let why guide the vision. Let how bring it to life. Keep both in alignment, and trust emerges inside and outside the company. This chapter also speaks directly to individuals. If you're a visionary, don't see process as your enemy. Find your how type, someone who loves the details, the logistics, the execution, and build something together. If you're a how type, recognize the power of your role. You're not secondary, you're essential. You are the bridge between belief and reality. To close the loop, starting with why gives your work meaning. Knowing how gives it structure. Without both, the system collapses. So if you found your why, the next step is to ask, how will I bring it to life? What values will I live by? What principles will guide my decisions? What habits, systems, and behaviors will make my why visible to others? Because belief without behavior is invisible, and behavior without belief is empty. But when why and how come together, that's when inspiration becomes action, and action becomes impact. Chapter 9. Know why, know how, then what? You've got your why, the core belief that drives everything you do. You've defined your how, the principles and processes that bring that belief to life. Now comes the final piece of the puzzle. The what. It's what you actually produce, the tangible proof of what you stand for. And here's the twist. While what is often the most visible part of any company, it's actually the least important unless it's aligned with the first two circles. In this chapter, Simon Sinek explains that the what must be an authentic expression of your why and your how. It's not enough to just build a product, deliver a service, or put out content. Your what must be so consistent with your why that people can feel it without even hearing it. Let's break it down. Your what is the stuff you offer to the world, the products you sell, the services you provide, the things people see, touch, buy, and use. It's also the actions you take, the emails you send, the ads you post, the presentations you give. And it's what people judge you by first. But here's the danger. Too many companies lead with what and forget the rest. They focus on features, benefits, packaging, pricing, and forget why they exist in the first place. Over time, their what becomes disconnected from their purpose. It becomes hollow. Sinek offers Apple again as a powerful example. Apple's why is to challenge the status quo and empower individuals. Their how is through beautifully designed, intuitive products. And their what? iPhones, MacBooks, iPads. But every what Apple produces is soaked in its why. From the product design to the packaging to the in-store experience, everything screams their belief in simplicity and creative freedom. That's why Apple customers don't just buy products, they believe in them, they trust them. And that trust comes from consistency across the golden circle. Now imagine if Apple suddenly released a budget laptop full of complicated menus, clunky software, and no emphasis on design. Even if it was cheap, people would feel betrayed. The what would be out of alignment with the why, and the brand would suffer. Sinek dives into another powerful point, the importance of symbols. Symbols are the physical what that represent your why. It could be a logo, a slogan, a uniform, or even behavior. When your symbols align with your purpose, they reinforce trust. When they don't, they create confusion. Think about Harley-Davidson. The logo isn't just a badge, it's a symbol of freedom and rebellion. People get tattoos of it not because of the motorcycle specs, but because of what it represents. That's what happens when what is deeply connected to your why. Now let's flip it. Think of a company that makes a big deal about customer service in its ads, but when you call them, "You're stuck in an hour-long phone tree," that's a broken what? It contradicts the why they claim to stand for, and customers notice always. Sinek points out that when the what is misaligned, it creates a gut-level discomfort even if people can't explain it. It's why customers abandon brands they once loved. It's why employees leave companies they once believed in. The brain is wired to seek consistency between belief and behavior. When the two don't match, trust breaks. That's why it's so important for leaders to constantly audit their what. Are our products, services, marketing, and customer experiences reflecting our why? Are we living our values in every touch point? Is our behavior backing up our belief? He tells a powerful story about a friend who worked at a company where the CEO constantly talked about teamwork and people-first values. But behind closed doors, it was cutthroat, numbers-obsessed, and fear-driven. The words and the reality didn't match. That's what that contradicts the why, and it eventually drives good people away. But when everything aligns, when your what is a clear and consistent representation of your why and your how, that's when movements form. That's when loyalty deepens. That's when you stop having to sell because people already believe. Sinek calls this the celery test. If you tell someone you want to eat healthy and they suggest M&Ms, Oreos, celery, and rice milk, you're left confused. But if you're truly clear on your why, eating healthy, you know celery and rice milk align with that purpose. You ignore the rest, because your why helps you choose the what. This simple test applies to every decision in business and life. When you're clear on your why, your how helps you deliver it, and your what confirms it. You don't waste time chasing every opportunity. You don't follow trends. You make decisions with confidence and clarity. This chapter also offers a challenge. Be brutally honest about your what. Don't just ask, does it work? Ask, does it align? That's the question that separates companies that inspire from those that confuse. And here's the beautiful part. When your why, how, and what are aligned, you don't just build a business. You build a brand, a culture, a following. You attract people who believe what you believe, and those people become your greatest advocates, not because of what you do, but because of why you do it. To wrap it up, this chapter reminds us that what you do matters, but only when it flows from why and how. Your what is the proof. It's the evidence of your belief. And when that proof is clear, consistent, and compelling, trust grows, loyalty grows, and your message becomes unstoppable. So yes, know your why, know your how, but above all, make sure your what tells the same story, because that's when people stop buying what you do and start believing in who you are. Chapter 10. Communication is not about speaking, it's about listening. We often think of great leaders as great speakers, eloquent, confident, magnetic. But in this chapter, Simon Sinek flips that script. He says real leadership isn't about talking louder, it's about listening better. Because communication that moves people doesn't begin with words, it begins with understanding. Sinek starts by reminding us, just because you're speaking clearly doesn't mean others are hearing what you mean. You can broadcast your message perfectly with every word polished and every graphic sharp. But if it doesn't resonate, if people don't feel the meaning behind it, it falls flat. That's why great communicators don't just craft messages, they tap into beliefs. They speak the language of emotion, of trust, of why. And to do that, they have to understand what their audience cares about. Let's go back to biology for a moment. Remember the golden circle and the limbic brain. That's where decision-making happens. That's where loyalty lives. It doesn't respond to logic, it responds to belief. So if your message only hits the rational brain, it won't inspire action. But if it hits the emotional brain, if it aligns with why, people will follow. This is why so many marketing campaigns fail. They explain what a product does, list all the features, show the price, but they don't answer the question that actually matters. Why should I care? And if your audience doesn't care, it doesn't matter how well you speak. Great brands understand this. They don't just shout about their products, they connect with people's values. Think of Nike. They don't lead with shoe specs, they lead with a belief. If you have a body, you're an athlete. That message doesn't just describe a product, it describes you. It speaks to identity. And when people feel heard, when they feel seen, they respond with loyalty. Sinek makes a key point here. Communication is not about pushing your message out. It's about pulling belief in. That means the responsibility is on the speaker, not just to speak, but to listen first, to observe, to empathize, to feel what your audience feels. This is especially true in leadership. When leaders don't listen, when they assume, dictate, or talk over their teams, they break trust. People stop engaging, they retreat. But when leaders ask questions, invite feedback, and genuinely listen, people feel valued, they feel safe. And in that safety, they contribute more, care more, and perform better. Sinek gives the example of Herb Kelleher, co-founder of Southwest Airlines. Herb didn't lead from a stage. He led by walking around, talking to baggage handlers, gate agents, flight attendants, asking them how things were going, what they needed, how the company could support them. That listening created a culture where people felt heard and where customers felt it too. This idea also applies to how we tell our why. Sinek says many people struggle to explain their purpose. They use vague language or they try too hard to sound inspiring. But the best way to express your why is actually to listen to the stories others tell about you. Ask your customers why they love you. Ask your team what they think your brand stands for. Look at the moments when people felt moved, helped, or inspired by your work. That feedback is gold. It reveals the emotional truth you might be too close to see. It reveals how others already hear your message, even if you're not saying it yet. In other words, your why lives in the stories people tell about you when you're not in the room. Your job as a communicator is to listen to those stories and then reflect them back with clarity. Sinek also points out that many companies make the mistake of trying to educate their customers instead of inspiring them. They bombard people with information, facts, charts, thinking that if people just understand, they'll buy in. But that's not how belief works. Belief is emotional. It starts with a feeling, not a fact. And facts only stick if they connect to that feeling. That's why great leaders and great brands don't just inform, they tell stories. Stories trigger emotion. They create connection. They invite people into a shared narrative. He brings up the example of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. again. When Dr. King gave his famous speech, he didn't say, "I have a plan." He said, "I have a dream." He didn't outline every policy. He painted a picture, and he painted it in a way that spoke to the collective hopes, fears, and values of his audience. That's why the message resonated. And here's the deeper truth. Dr. King knew his audience. He listened to them. He understood their pain, their history, their aspirations. So when he spoke, it wasn't just his voice. It was their voice echoing through him. That's the power of listening. Sinek challenges every leader, marketer, and communicator to do the same, to stop talking at people and start listening with them, to shift from pushing messages to pulling alignment, from selling features to sharing beliefs. He also warns that when leaders focus only on messaging without listening, they often become tone deaf. They miss what matters most. They might double down on a campaign, a strategy, or a speech that feels totally off to their audience. And when that happens, even a well-crafted message can backfire. Listening is the safeguard against that. It's how you stay rooted in reality, how you stay connected to the people you're trying to lead or serve. To wrap it up, this chapter is a powerful reminder that communication is a two-way street. Real influence doesn't come from perfect words. It comes from deep understanding, from empathy, from curiosity. So if you want your message to land, start by listening. If you want to inspire action, understand belief. If you want to lead with purpose, tune in to what people already feel. Because in the end, communication isn't about what you say. It's about what they hear. Chapter 11. When Why Goes Fuzzy. What happens when a company starts strong, clear vision, passionate team, loyal customers, but somewhere along the line, things just shift. The culture changes, the energy fades, customers start complaining, employees disengage. Everything feels off, even if the numbers still look fine. That, Simon Sinek says, is what happens when your why goes fuzzy. In this chapter, he reveals one of the most common and dangerous problems successful organizations face: losing touch with the very purpose that made them special in the first place. And it happens more often than you'd think. Here's how it usually starts. A company is founded by someone with a deep belief of why. Maybe it's to empower people, disrupt an outdated system, or bring joy to others. That belief fuels the early days. Everyone's on board. Everyone's inspired. Customers feel the passion. The brand grows. But then success kicks in. Revenue climbs. The company starts hiring fast, expanding fast, building layers of leadership. The founder steps back, or new executives come in, people who weren't there for the why, but were hired for their what, to scale, manage, optimize. Suddenly, decisions are based on data, not belief. The why gets buried under spreadsheets and quarterly goals. The messaging gets more polished, but less meaningful. The company is still functioning, but something's missing. That's when the slow erosion begins. Sinek says it's not growth that causes this. It's losing sight of why the company grew in the first place. The belief that once led is now in the back seat. And when belief fades, so does loyalty, so does trust, so does heart. He uses Walmart as a striking example. Sam Walton, the founder, had a clear why: to serve the community and provide value for working-class families. His stores were friendly, employee-focused, and deeply connected to small-town America. And it worked. Walmart grew rapidly, not just because of low prices, but because of a genuine sense of purpose. But after Walton's death, leadership began to change. The focus shifted from service to shareholder value. Prices were still low, but working conditions worsened. The culture changed. The why, once rooted in community, was replaced by pure profit, and customers noticed. So did employees. Walmart still thrived financially for a time, but it lost its soul. It became a symbol of corporate greed, not community care. That's what happens when why goes fuzzy. Contrast that with Costco, another discount retailer, but one that's kept its why intact. Costco believes in treating employees well, offering fair prices, and building trust. Their pay is higher. Their staff stays longer. Their customers are fiercely loyal because the why is still alive and visible. Sinek explains that maintaining clarity of why isn't a one-time thing. It's a discipline, a daily choice. As a company grows, leaders must protect the belief system like it's sacred. It has to be reinforced in every meeting, every hire, every campaign. And here's the key: new leaders must believe in the original why. If they're just brought in for their skills, not their alignment, they'll lead with logic, not purpose. That's how cultures shift. That's how belief becomes branding and branding becomes empty. Sinek talks about the difference between succession and replacement. If a founder leaves and the new leader doesn't share the same why, then the vision can collapse. It might take years, but the decay begins the moment that emotional connection is broken. He gives a powerful analogy. Imagine a torch being passed in a relay race. The flame is the why. The person doesn't matter as much as the fire. If the flame is dropped or passed to someone who doesn't protect it, the race is lost. This lesson also applies to startups. In the early days, everyone's close to the founder. The belief flows naturally. But as you grow, you need to design systems that keep that belief alive. You need rituals, storytelling, hiring practices, and leadership training that reinforce the why. Otherwise, it slowly gets replaced by what, numbers, tasks, reports. And when what leads instead of why, people stop caring. That's why companies that rebrand often fail. They change the logo, update the tagline, maybe launch a new ad campaign, but it doesn't work because people aren't looking for new what. They're looking for original why, and if that's gone, a makeover won't fix it. So how do you prevent this? Sinek says the answer is guardianship. Someone, ideally the founder, but it could be a culture officer, a visionary leader, or even a team, must be responsible for protecting the why. Their job is to speak up when decisions drift from belief, to remind everyone constantly what this organization stands for. He points to Howard Schultz at Starbucks, who returned to the company when he sensed the why was slipping. Starbucks had become transactional, focused on drive-thrus and stock prices instead of experience and connection. Schultz shut down stores for retraining, refocused on values, and recentered the company's purpose. It wasn't easy, but it worked. The core message of this chapter is clear. Success doesn't make your why stronger. It makes it more vulnerable, because the more you grow, the more tempting it is to focus on results over reasons. And that's the moment you need to double down on belief. So ask yourself, whether you're leading a company, a team, or just your own career, is my why still clear, or has it gone fuzzy? Do people around me know what we believe? Do I make decisions based on values or metrics? Is the fire still lit? Because when why fades, culture follows. And once you lose your culture, it's incredibly hard to get it back. To wrap it up, this chapter is a cautionary tale. It's a wake-up call for anyone riding the wave of success without remembering what started it. It's not about going backwards. It's about going deeper. Doubling down on your purpose. Protecting it fiercely. Because no matter how big your company gets, if you lose your why, you lose everything. Chapter 12. Split happens. Growth is exciting. It means more customers, more opportunities, more attention. But there's a hidden danger that creeps in when success starts to scale. The split. In this chapter, Simon Sinek introduces the concept of the split, the moment when a company or leader begins to drift away from their original why. And unless it's caught and corrected, this split can quietly destroy everything the organization was built on. So, what causes the split? Sinek explains that it often happens during moments of rapid success or pressure. Maybe a company goes public and suddenly Wall Street demands quarterly performance. Maybe leadership changes hands. Maybe growth happens so fast that the founding culture struggles to keep up. In these moments, decisions start to be made based on what and how, on strategy, tactics, and efficiency, rather than belief. At first, the difference seems small. A slight shift in messaging, a change in product design, a new marketing campaign that feels a little off. But over time, if the why isn't actively reinforced, these little changes compound. They become a new normal. And before long, the organization is still running, but without a soul. Sinek says this is the point where companies start chasing the competition instead of leading from within. They mimic what others are doing because it works, not because it aligns. And in doing so, they lose what made them unique in the first place. He uses Dell as an example. In the early 2000s, Dell dominated the PC market. Their machines were customizable, affordable, and efficient. But Dell was built on what? Selling computers. There wasn't a clear why behind the brand. So when Apple introduced the iPod, something totally outside Dell's category, Dell tried to compete by releasing their own music player. It failed, not because the product was bad, but because it wasn't rooted in purpose. Dell wasn't a company that inspired, so no one was inspired to follow them into new territory. Compare that to Apple. Apple launched the iPod not as a product, but as an extension of its why, to challenge the status quo and empower individuals through beautifully designed tools. The iPod wasn't just a music player, it was a symbol, and people bought it not because of what it was, but because of why it existed. This contrast illustrates the cost of the split. When companies lose their why, they lose the emotional connection that drives trust and loyalty. They may still make money for a while, but they stop leading, they stop mattering, and eventually they start fading. Sinek also addresses how the split affects employees. When the original vision starts to blur, culture fractures. People get confused, teams become misaligned, leaders talk about numbers and targets instead of mission and meaning. And the people who joined for purpose, the ones who cared, start to feel out of place. They either disengage or they leave. This is why companies with high turnover or low morale often have a why problem, not just a management problem. When people don't see how their work contributes to something meaningful, they stop giving their best, not because they're lazy, but because they've lost the connection. Sinek emphasizes that the split doesn't just happen in companies, it happens in individuals too. You start your career passionate about helping others or creating something meaningful. Then life happens. Bills pile up, expectations shift. You take jobs for the money or the prestige. Before long, you're climbing a ladder you never meant to be on. You're successful maybe, but you're not fulfilled. That's the personal split, and just like with companies, it happens quietly. You might still be productive, still busy, but that spark, the reason you started, it's gone. And unless you stop to realign, burnout becomes inevitable. So how do you prevent or fix the split? Sinek says the first step is awareness. You have to notice when you're drifting, ask hard questions. Does this decision reflect our why? Is this new hire aligned with our values? Is this strategy something we believe in, or just something we think will work? It takes courage to ask those questions, especially when success is on the line. But that courage is what separates leaders from managers, brands from commodities, movements from companies. He also suggests making the why a daily part of your organization's language. Talk about it in meetings, post it on the walls, tell stories that reflect it, hire people who believe it, reward behavior that aligns with it. Because the split doesn't happen all at once. It happens in the silence, in the moments when no one's watching. So you have to be proactive. You have to protect your why the way a lighthouse protects the shore. No matter how high the waves of growth or pressure, your belief has to stay visible. Sinek brings this idea home with a simple truth. Profit is not a purpose. Money is a result, a consequence. If you chase money at the cost of purpose, you may win the short game, but you'll lose the long one. And in a world where customers have infinite choices, and employees want more than a paycheck. Purpose isn't a luxury. It's a competitive advantage. So whether you're a CEO, a team leader, a freelancer, or just someone trying to build a meaningful life, the message is clear. Keep your why front and center. Revisit it often. Build systems around it. Hire and fire by it. Speak it out loud, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. Because when you stay anchored in your why, growth doesn't cause a split. It strengthens your story. And when split happens, and it will, you'll be ready to close the gap. Not by talking louder, but by leading from the inside out. Chapter 13. The Origins of a Why. Where does a powerful why come from? Is it something you can create from scratch, like a logo or business plan? Or is it something you discover, something that's always been there, waiting to be uncovered? In this chapter, Simon Sinek makes it clear your why isn't invented, it's found. It lives in your past. It's rooted in your life experience, your values, your defining moments. And whether you're a person or a company, your why already exists. The work is to reveal it. Sinek begins by explaining that every inspiring leader or organization has a foundational origin story, a point in time when something mattered deeply. That emotional clarity became the core belief that guided everything else. It wasn't manufactured, it was lived. Take the Wright Brothers. Their why wasn't build a flying machine. That was the what. Their why was rooted in a deep belief that flight would change the world. They didn't do it for fame or fortune. They did it because they were passionate about progress, driven by purpose and inspired by the challenge itself. That's what gave them the resilience to push through countless failures, limited funding, and fierce competition. Others had more resources, but they had belief. And belief wins in the long run. The key lesson here, a why that's based only on success or ambition, is flimsy. Real whys are grounded in emotion and experience. They reflect what you care about most, and they never change. Sinek explains that individuals and organizations alike must look backward to move forward. Your why is not about who you want to be, it's about who you already are at your best. When you've been most fulfilled, most proud, most alive, what were you doing? What values were you honoring? Who were you serving? Answering those questions uncovers patterns, and those patterns point you toward your why. Sinek uses the example of a woman named Meg, a successful executive who came to him struggling to find meaning in her work. She had achieved everything she set out to do, but something felt empty. She was stuck in the what and the how, but had lost sight of the why. Together they went back to her childhood, her early career, her happiest memories, and a theme emerged. She had always felt most alive when she was helping others grow. That was her why. Once she saw it clearly, everything shifted. She began making choices both professionally and personally that aligned with that belief, and fulfillment returned. This kind of introspection isn't just helpful, it's necessary, because when you don't know your why, you chase goals that don't satisfy. You follow trends, compare yourself to others, or get trapped in someone else's definition of success. But when you do know your why, everything becomes clearer. You make better decisions, you attract the right people. You stop second-guessing yourself. For organizations, the process is similar. Your company's why is often tied to the founder's story, the original spark that inspired it. But as the business grows, that story gets diluted or forgotten. Sinek urges companies to rediscover their origin, to reconnect with what they set out to change, improve, or fight for. That story becomes a compass, a filter, a guide. But here's the catch. Discovering your why takes courage. It means being honest about what matters, about what moves you, about what you're willing to fight for, even if it's not popular, profitable, or easy. Sinek also emphasizes that your why should never be abstract. To be the best or to make the world better is too vague. Your why should be specific and actionable. It should be something others can feel, something that guides your behavior, something that people can point to and say, yes, that's who you are. And once you find it, you must protect it, because the world will always pull you toward what? Toward results, outcomes, accolades. But your job is to lead from why, to remember that your real value doesn't come from what you do, it comes from why you do it. Sinek offers a final insight here. People don't buy your product, they buy your origin, your belief, your why. When they know where your passion comes from, they trust you more. They feel connected. And in a world full of options, connection is the most valuable currency you can offer. To summarize, this chapter is a call to go inward, to stop chasing external validation and start asking deeper questions. What drives me? What patterns define me? What belief has guided my best work? Because your why isn't out there waiting to be invented. It's inside you, waiting to be remembered. Chapter 14, The New Competition. In the final chapter of Start with Why, Simon Sinek flips the traditional idea of competition on its head. Instead of obsessing over beating others, he challenges us to focus on something far more powerful, being better than ourselves. Because when you know your why, competition doesn't define you, it inspires you. Sinek starts by exposing the toxic effects of traditional metrics-driven competition. Most businesses compare themselves to others in their industry. They watch what competitors are doing. Copy tactics, chase market share, cut prices, out-advertise, always trying to win. But in that race to outperform others, they often forget why they exist in the first place. And here's the truth. When you play the game of who's best, you're letting someone else define success for you. The problem with this approach, Sinek explains, is that it's external. You're focused on others, not on your own values, beliefs, or mission. And when your eyes are always on the competition, you start making short-term decisions just to stay ahead. You cut corners, you chase trends, you react rather than lead. It's a race to the bottom. Instead, Sinek offers a more inspiring lens, the infinite mindset. In an infinite game, there is no winning. The goal is not to beat the other player. It's to stay in the game, to keep playing, to keep becoming. That mindset isn't about comparison, it's about commitment. Commitment to your purpose, your why. Great organizations and leaders don't obsess over what their competitors are doing. They obsess over how well they're living their why. Their goal isn't to be better than others. It's to be better for others and better than they were yesterday. This concept isn't just theory. It's how enduring companies think. Take Southwest Airlines. For years, their focus was crystal clear, make air travel affordable and accessible. While other airlines tried to copy their strategies, Southwest ignored them. They stuck to their values. Even when competitors added new fees, changed seating models, or chased premium customers, Southwest stayed loyal to their why. And their customers stayed loyal to them. Sinek also contrasts Microsoft and Apple. During a time when Steve Ballmer led Microsoft, the company was fixated on Apple, constantly reacting to Apple's innovations, trying to beat them at their own game. In one meeting Sinek attended, nearly every presentation from Microsoft referenced Apple. Then he visited Apple. Not once did Apple mention Microsoft. They weren't focused on competitors, they were focused on design, simplicity, user experience, the things that aligned with their why. Apple didn't worry about what Microsoft was doing. They stayed focused on who they were. That's the difference between playing to win and playing with purpose. Sinek says this mindset applies just as powerfully on a personal level. Too many people measure success by external standards: a higher salary, a bigger house, more followers, more likes. But when you live that way, you'll always feel behind. There will always be someone richer, smarter, faster, or more successful. Instead, he invites us to redefine success. Are you living your why? Are you serving others? Are you staying true to what you believe? If the answer is yes, you're succeeding, no matter what the scoreboard says. And here's the beautiful part. When you live this way, competition becomes collaboration. You stop seeing others as threats. You see them as inspiration. Their success doesn't diminish yours. It challenges you to rise higher, to go deeper, to push your purpose even further. Sinek calls this the worthy rival. A worthy rival isn't someone you hate or envy. It's someone who reveals your weaknesses and shows you where you can grow. They help you see your blind spots. They make you better. Not through competition, but through clarity. Think about sports teams. The best rivalries bring out the best in both sides, not because they're trying to destroy each other, but because they challenge each other to perform at their highest level. That's what a worthy rival does in business and in life. Sinek also makes a critical point. Your why should outlast your products. Products change, markets change, but your why stays the same. That's why companies that lead with purpose are more resilient. When times get tough, they adapt without losing their identity. When trends shift, they evolve without chasing fads, because they know who they are, and more importantly, why they're here. To close, Sinek reminds us that the world doesn't need more companies trying to be the best. It needs more companies and people who are trying to be their best, who are grounded in belief, who are led by purpose, who compete not with others but with themselves. That's the new competition. So whether you're building a business, leading a team, or simply trying to live with more meaning, don't chase others. Don't run someone else's race. Don't let outside noise define your value. Start with why, and let your purpose lead you, not just to success, but to significance. Afterward, as Start with Why comes to a close, Simon Sinek circles back to the idea that sparked the entire journey. True leadership, the kind that inspires loyalty, drives change, and creates legacy, begins not with what you do or how you do it, but with why you do it. In the afterword, Sinek shifts from explanation to reflection. This isn't about adding new content. It's about reinforcing the central heartbeat of the book. It's a reminder that why isn't a business tactic or branding tool. It's a way of living. It's a philosophy that transcends industries, roles, and goals. Sinek shares that the reason this message resonated with so many is because deep down people are searching for meaning, not just customers or employees, but leaders themselves. In a world obsessed with quarterly results, flashy marketing, and social media metrics, it's easy to lose sight of purpose. But why gives you something to hold on to when the noise gets loud. He acknowledges that discovering your why is not an easy task. It requires introspection, honesty, and sometimes a little vulnerability. But once you find it, once you uncover that belief or cause that gets you out of bed in the morning, it changes everything. Leaders become more intentional, teams become more united, brands become more human, and decisions become simpler, not easier, but simpler, because the why becomes your filter. Sinek also reflects on the response the Golden Circle has generated, from entrepreneurs to school teachers, military generals to CEOs. People across the globe have applied the concept in powerful ways, and the impact has been more profound than he ever imagined, not because it gave people new knowledge, but because it helped them remember what truly matters. He reinforces that why is not just for companies, it's for individuals too. You don't need to be a CEO or a founder to lead with purpose. You can be a teacher, a nurse, a parent, a coach. Leadership isn't about title, it's about clarity and belief. When you show up every day guided by your why, you become a lighthouse for others. And here's the final truth. Why doesn't promise instant success. It's not a shortcut or a viral hack. It's a long game. It's about building trust slowly, deeply, and authentically. It's about doing things the hard way, the right way, because it aligns with your values, because it matters. Sinek closes the book not with fanfare but with quiet conviction. He reminds us that each of us has the potential to inspire, each of us can lead. And the best way to start with why. So, why do you do what you do? Seriously, after everything you've heard, can you answer that question with clarity, with conviction, with heart? Because here's the thing, knowing your why isn't just about feeling inspired, it's about showing up differently, making choices that align with something deeper than just a paycheck or a promotion. It's about leading with purpose. In your business, your relationships, your life, you've got the knowledge now. But let's be real, knowledge isn't power until you act on it. Understanding the golden circle, seeing the impact of clarity, trust, and belief, that's step one. But what you do with it, that's what changes everything. Maybe you're feeling that pull right now, that shift in perspective, that realization that chasing the next dollar isn't enough if you're not connected to something meaningful. Maybe you're starting to see success not as something flashy or loud, but as something true, something aligned with who you really are, because that's what Start With Why is all about. It's not just for entrepreneurs or CEOs, it's for anyone who wants to live, lead, and grow with intention. It's about building wealth not just in your bank account, but in trust, in purpose, in legacy. And here's the best part. You don't need permission. You don't need a title. You just have to start. Start asking better questions. Start listening more. Start leading from within. Now the choice is yours. So if this hit home, if it sparked something in you, don't let it fade. Like, share, subscribe, talk about it, reflect on it, live it. Don't wait. Start now. Start with why.